Hello and welcome to Maximum Busted, the first talking book about the band. It was written and researched by Ben Graham, music is by Amanda Thompson, and it's read by Nancy McLean. You can check out our full catalogue on our website at www.chromedreams.co.uk.
I mean, Brit Awards was stupid.
Oh yeah, how surreal was that? Yeah, when we won our first award, I think all of us were just completely shell shocked. And I remember kind of walking up there to kind of pick the award up and say the speech and stuff. And it was just really weird being on that side of things. 3 years ago, we were actually there in the audience, but to be on that end that was really amazing, but very surreal at the same time.
Busted are the biggest pop band in Britain today. There's no question about it. In just a couple of years, they've released no less than 7 top 3 singles, including 3 number ones. Both of their albums have sold millions too, with their debut going double platinum within a few months of its release. When they won both Best Pop Act and Best Breakthrough Act at the 2004 Brit Awards, it just confirmed what everybody with ears, eyes and taste already knew, that Busted were the hottest thing on the planet, and then some. Busted could be the perfect band for the 21st century. They combine the best aspects of both pop boy bands and indie guitar bands. They're young, funny and good-looking, but they also write their own songs and play their own instruments, meaning that they have something to appeal to everyone. The girls all fancy them, and the boys all want to be them. Their tunes have the hooks, the vocal harmonies, the beats and the killer choruses of the finest pop, but it's all layered with enough punk rock guitar and attitude to get the guys on their skateboards moshing along as well, although hopefully they'll get off their skateboards first. As a result, Busted have earned love from both the pop mags and TV shows, Smash Hits, CD UK and the snooty student-friendly publications like Q, NME and The Face as well. Even grown-up newspapers like The Observer and The Sunday Times gave the albums good reviews. Not too shabby for a group that some people still sniffily dismiss as a manufactured boy band. But just what is a boy band anyway? Radiohead are a band, and they're all male, but no one ever calls them a boy band. And what about the Strokes? Everyone fancies them and goes on about their hair and the clothes they're wearing, yet their fans consider them the real thing, while Busted are sneered at for being plastic and fake. Well, cover your ears, indie kids, because Busted may have more in common with all of your favourite bands than you'd care to hear. After all, weren't the Beatles, every serious music fan's favourite group of all time, the first proper boy band? Everyone knew their names and their favourite colours, and at their concerts you couldn't hear a thing over the noise of screaming fans, at least until they stopped playing live, all grew horrible beards, and started making long, dull records that serious music critics could compare to classical composers like Tchaikovsky, who was a rubbish dancer. The kids soon got bored of beards and guitar solos, and welcomed back proper pop in the early 70s, in the shape of David Bowie, The Sweet, T-Rex, The Osmonds and the Jackson 5. And then there was the Bay City Rollers, who were the ultimate boy band of their day. They were all called Eric and Derek and wore huge tartan flares, and everyone fancied them and blubbed at their concerts because they couldn't marry them, and so followed them back to their hotels and hung around outside waiting to cut off a piece of their hair instead. The Bay City Rollers were never very cool, but they were the main inspiration for another manufactured boy band that came along in the mid-70s and single-handedly invented a thing called punk rock. The Sex Pistols were a group of teenage boys, none of whom knew how to play or sing, put together by a manager called Malcolm McLaren, who wanted them to be a kind of nasty, unwashed version of the Rollers, in order to sell the clothes from his boutique, which all the band had to wear. So the next time someone tells you that Busted can't be punk, remember that punk was started by a manufactured boy band in the first place. After that, it was boy bands all the way. The 80s gave us Duran Duran, Wham, Culture Club, Bros and New Kids on the Block, while the 90s saw Take That muscle past the likes of East 17 and Boyzone to become the biggest boy band in the world ever. The noughties, meanwhile, have seen the rise of bands like the Backstreet Boys, Blue and Busted. Yet Busted are nobody's puppets. They're in control of everything that they do, and you won't see them breaking into synchronised dance routines at their concerts or in their videos. They'll be too busy playing their guitars, leaping around, singing the songs they wrote and dripping with real sweat. If Busted are manufactured, then they've manufactured themselves. Busted are the real thing. and here's how it happened.
Chris, man, Chris could be in a band.
My little brother.
Chris could front a band now. I'd like to find like a band without a front man and put James's little 12-year-old brother in.
No, he's 11.
He's 11. He's such a dude, and he was in the Year 3000 video actually.
Yep.
And yeah, he's cool.
James Bourne grew up in Southend, a popular seaside resort on the Essex coast. He was born on the 13th of September 1983. His dad was a typical Essex wheeler-dealer, a self-made man in the Del Trotter tradition, only slightly more successful. From inauspicious beginnings selling dodgy Ralph Lauren shirts to factory workers out of the back of his car, his lines of business at various times included manufacturing diving equipment and selling neon lights to Piccadilly Circus. Although he would eventually earn a comfortable living from his import and export business, James's father was necessarily away on the road a lot while James was growing up. According to his mum, James has always had musical leanings. She claims that he used to burst into song in his pushchair and that there was nothing she could do to shut him up until he was done. Whenever James has got into something, he was always pursued it single-mindedly, never giving up until he's wrung his subject dry. One obsession would then lead to another. For instance, when James was 6, he was into roller skating. He would spend every Wednesday night and Saturday morning at Southend's Roller City, and it was there that he first saw an older kid wearing a Bart Simpson t-shirt. This was before The Simpsons had been seen on UK TV, and James had no idea who Bart Simpson was, but despite this, or perhaps because of it, Bart Simpson became his new obsession. He tracked down every scrap of information he could about the cheeky cartoon character, and this soon led him to the cash-in hit single credited to Bart Simpson, Do the Bartman. One line in the song mentioned dancing like Michael Jackson. James duly set out to find out who Michael Jackson was. Naturally enough, when he found out, Jacko replaced Bart Simpson and roller skating as the 7-year-old James's new obsession. From here on in, it was Michael Jackson all the way. Nothing the self-styled King of Pop has done, or has been accused of doing since, has tarnished him in James's eyes. He still regards his personal discovery of Michael Jackson and his music as being one of the most important moments in his life. Later obsessions with Justin Timberlake and super producer Max Martin could never match the impact of Jackson, as the star's Dangerous and Bad albums became the soundtrack to James's childhood and teenage years. Soon after discovering who he was, James actually saw Michael Jackson in concert at Wembley Stadium. He went with his friend Elliot and Elliot's dad. Elliot and the 7-year-old James took turns in sitting on his dad's shoulders in order to see the stage, but even when he was down on the ground and couldn't see a thing, James was still getting off on the atmosphere and the excitement of the event. He still contends that he has never experienced anything else like it. When he was offered the chance to learn an instrument in music lessons at school, he chose the guitar purely in order to learn how to play Michael Jackson songs. In fact, he found the instrument incredibly difficult, and Michael's songs frustratingly complex. Nevertheless, he persevered, and eventually managed to play Earth Song all the way through. An achievement enough to make him want to continue to play music. Other interests fell by the wayside when James realised that he'd never be as good as the greats. As a child, tennis was another of his obsessions, and he was fiercely competitive, but he gave it up when he came to the conclusion that he wasn't ever going to be the world champion. One other interest that James felt he was good enough to continue with, and which he found considerable success with, was acting. At the age of 10, he played one of Fagin's urchin gang of pickpocket children in a local youth theatre's production of the musical Oliver, and it went well enough for him to attend open auditions for the same production in the West End, with famous British film actor Jonathan Pryce as Fagin. To his amazement, James got the part and appeared on stage in the musical for the next 2 years, eventually graduating to playing the lead role of Oliver himself. For a while then, it looked as though acting was going to be the artistic area in which James made a glittering career for himself. The cast of Oliver appeared at the Royal Variety performance in 1994, alongside Take That, and James had walk-on bit parts in shows like The Bill and London's Burning. But music was nevertheless his first love, and if his guitar playing was still a little shaky, his experience in Oliver certainly earned him his vocal chops. By the time he'd taken on the lead role, he was required to sing several numbers on stage every night, tremulously belting out the likes of Food Glorious Food to audiences consisting of everyone from Japanese tourists to Prince Charles. And although he didn't know it at the time, acting would open the door to his musical future in another way. For it was while he was doing the round of auditions for theatre parts and TV shows that James got to know the familiar face of another child actor scaling the lower rungs of the biz, a cheeky young pup, then going under the name of Matty J.
Do you know what? We don't really have a strict regime. A lot of writers you hear about sort of like they write at a certain time in the day and at a certain point, you know, and do this certain way and stuff like that. We kind of freestyle, man. Like one of us will come up with something and come to the other two and go, you know, what do you think of this? Or anything can happen, you know.
Matty J. Willis was born in Tooting, South London, on the 8th of May 1983, but the family moved to Moseley in Surrey when he was still a baby. Moseley was a small town divided between the big, detached houses on the posh east side and the working-class estates on the west side. The dividing line, Matty reckoned, ran right down his family street. Matty's parents split up when he was 3 and his mum soon remarried. Matty was nicknamed Fidget as a child due to his inability to sit still for more than a second. He was always outdoors, climbing trees and walls, and managed to break 28 different bones in his body by the time he was 10. He was so hyperactive that he wasn't allowed any E numbers in his food, such as the additives commonly found in orange squash, in case they sent him completely out of control. At school too, he always seemed to be up to some mischief, and although he never meant any harm, he was soon labelled a troublemaker. Whenever something happened and the culprit couldn't be found, Matty got the blame. 9 times out of 10, it wasn't anything to do with him, but each false accusation counted against him the next time he was suspected. Eventually his parents were called in, but luckily Matty's mum believed him when he protested his innocence. She took him out of school and sent him to the one that Amanda was attending instead, where the teachers weren't prejudiced against him from the start, and he could begin again with a clean slate. Here, Matty began to take an interest in drama and became heavily involved with school plays. He was also getting well into rock and pop music, and his favourite band at the time was the American pop-punk group Green Day, who had a huge hit in the mid-90s with their song Basket Case. This insanely catchy, high-speed anthem would spawn a whole generation of punk pop bands to come, most notably Blink-182, whose hit All the Small Things provided another landmark listening moment for the young Matty. Hearing it on the radio and then seeing the video for the first time, he fell in love with the song, the group, their look, attitude and lifestyle. This, he thought, was what he wanted to do with his life. Playing music, getting girls, having a laugh with your mates, seeing the world. He wanted to be in Blink-182. By this time, Matty had formed a band of his own, with his mates Pete and Chris, called Sabotage. They performed exclusively Green Day cover versions and never made it out of the garage. Matty was playing drums, after somehow winning the top-of-the-range drum kit in a TV competition when he was 13. He was also doing a bit of singing, but presumably no one could hear him over the racket of the drums, or maybe his parents always left the house when they practiced. Because one night, on a family outing to a pub in Hastings, Matty's mum commented that she'd never heard him sing, and insisted that he put his name down for the karaoke. She wanted him to sing Love Is All Around, the old Trog song revived in the 90s by Wet Wet Wet. Matty agreed, but only on the condition that he could sing Don't Look Back in Anger by Oasis instead. Matty gave it his best Gallagher sneer and rock star posing, with the result that his mum wasn't the only one who was impressed. Afterwards, an amateur songwriter in the audience came up and told him that he was entering a song he'd written for the annual Vivian Ellis Award, a national prize for budding tunesmiths, and that he needed someone to sing it for him. Matty agreed and recorded the demo, and a week later the writer phoned him at home saying that there was a scholarship going at London's famous Sylvia Young Stage School, and he hoped that Matty didn't mind, but he'd put his name forward for it. Blimey, Matty thought, that's a bit presumptuous. What would someone like him be doing going to a Ponzi stage school? It would cost a fortune, and his family weren't exactly rolling in it. Only arty rich kids went to stage school, not ordinary lads like Matty. But that was exactly what the scholarship was intended to address. It gave talented youngsters from poorer backgrounds the chance to enrol in the school and get all their fees paid so that they could make the most of their abilities. The Sylvia Young Stage School taught aspiring thespians everything they needed to know about acting, speech, movement and dance, singing, posture and performance, and as a result, it has produced many of Britain's most respected actors and actresses, and quite a few successful pop stars as well. Matty's mum insisted he go to the audition, but despite an impressive performance, the scholarship went to somebody else. That was that, Matty thought, but a few weeks later, he received an unexpected phone call. It was Sylvia Young herself, saying that she had loved his audition piece so much that she was willing to offer him a place, and that if he agreed to go on the books of her acting and modelling agency, she could find him enough work on the side to pay his fees. Matty was in, and he'd be earning practical experience at the same time to boot.